Ever feel like, you're at the bowling alley, but someone put up a sheet in front of the pins? You're throwing the ball, you're putting in the effort, but you have absolutely no idea if you're hitting anything.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I get that.
It's frustrating, right? And that's kind of how work can feel sometimes.
And
Putting in the effort, but not always sure what the goals are, let alone how to hit them.
right. You're in the dark. And that's where this idea of the one-minute manager comes in, which, let me tell you, this book is packed with really practical advice.
And it's been around forever, right? Like it's one of those classic business books, but I feel like people kind of write it off as being overly simplistic.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, surprisingly, I think, because it's true. A lot of people hear the title and they think, okay, this is a bit basic. But it's been a bestseller for decades for a reason.
Right, exactly. So let's dive into it. The book jumps right into this idea of 1 minute goals. Okay, setting goals makes sense. But 1 minute, help me out here. What's the deal with the 1 minute?
So it's all about clarity and focus. Like, imagine a typical work environment, right? You might have objectives that are kind of vague, buried in some long email thread that you got 3 weeks ago.
Oh, tell me about it.
Right. And so 1-minute goals are about flipping the script on that. It's getting those goals crystal clear, writing them down in a super concise way that literally takes 1 minute, like the name says, just 1 minute to review.
Oh, so no more scrolling through your inbox trying to remember what you're supposed to be doing?
Exactly.
Okay, I like where this is
And
going.
it's not even just about saving time, though that is a perk. But the book argues that having this level of clarity actually reduces ambiguity and stress for employees
Mm.
because they know what's expected of them. They always know what good looks like.
Right, no more guessing games. Everyone's literally on the same page. Okay, I'm into it. So we've got the goals, but how do we actually get people excited about, actually achieving those goals? And this is where things get really interesting because they bring in 1 minute praisings and get this, they use pigeons to explain it. Pigeons.
Yeah. One thing this book does well is it takes these potentially dry management concepts
Yeah.
and somehow makes them relatable.
Oh, yeah, tell me about it. Okay, pigeons, break it down for me.
Okay, so it's this idea of rewarding what they call approximations of the behavior you want to see.
Hmm.
So, like, you don't just wait for the pigeon to do this whole complex action perfectly right off the bat. You start by rewarding any behavior that's even kind of in the right direction.
Okay, I vaguely remember this from the book. It's like they use the example of training a whale to jump over a rope.
Oh, yeah,
They
exactly.
don't start with the rope like way up high. They start at the bottom of the pool, the whale swims over it, boom, reward. And then little by little, they raise the bar literally.
Exactly. And that's the principle, whether you're talking about pigeons or whales or people, right?
Yep, humans.
Humans, yes. You break down these big, complex goals into smaller, more achievable steps, and then you recognize the progress along the way, right? And
Mm.
by doing that, you create this much more positive and motivating environment.
I love that. And it's so important, the book stresses, to actually give the praise, like immediately after someone does something right, not like a week later. And to be genuine about it, not just like a generic good job.
Right. Like you actually mean it.
Yeah. And it reminds me of this study I read about how even like tiny little expressions of gratitude or praise can significantly boost people's mood and their motivation. It's like our brains are wired for that positive reinforcement.
Absolutely. And, when you think about how rarely that actually happens in a lot of work environments,
It's true.
it makes you realize there's like this huge untapped potential there.
Right. It does make you think, like, are we all just walking around, like, starved for a little bit of praise?
Maybe. Uh-huh. No, but I think that's a really good point. But obviously, work isn't always like sunshine and rainbows all the time.
Sadly.
Right. Like even with the best intentions, things go wrong. Mistakes happen.
Totally. And that's where I think this book gets really interesting because it introduces this whole concept of 1 minute reprimands. Right.
And, even just hearing that phrase, I don't know about you, but I kind of cringe, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody wants to be reprimanded. But the more I read about it, the more I realized it's not about being like harsh or judgmental or anything like that.
No, and it doesn't have to be. And that's, I think, one of the biggest misconceptions about it is that it's like this really harsh thing. It's really just about addressing problems quickly, directly, respectfully,
Okay.
and doing it in a way that actually helps the person learn and grow, which is like the whole point, right?
Right, exactly. So, okay, walk me through this. How does a 1-minute reprimand actually work?
Okay, so let's say someone on your team, makes a mistake, they miss a deadline, whatever it is, the 1-minute reprimand encourages you to address it right away, like
Uh,
immediately.
Interesting.
Be super specific about what went wrong and really try to avoid making it personal. So instead of saying, ugh, you're always late with your work, you would say something like, hey, this report was due yesterday and it's not on my desk. Oh, okay. So you're separating the behavior from like the person themselves.
Exactly.
Okay.
But here's the really crucial part. So after you've addressed the problem, the behavior, right, you remind the person of their value. Like you remind them that you believe in them, that you believe in their abilities.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's interesting.
Right. And again, think back to, that study you mentioned earlier about positive reinforcement. Like
Yeah.
the same principle applies here. By ending on that positive note, it leaves the person feeling motivated to improve, not demoralized or ashamed.
Yeah, totally. And it makes me think about the book actually gives some examples of this kind of approach outside of like a traditional work setting. Like there's a whole section about crisis intervention with alcoholics.
Right. And they talk about how effective that can be, right?
Yeah.
Combining that direct feedback with like genuine care and support.
Yeah.
It's about setting those clear boundaries, but at the same time, you're reinforcing the person's inherent worth as a human being.
Yeah, and it reminds me of that quote. I think it was Maya Angelou who said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I feel like that applies here.
100%. And I think that's what we often forget, right? As managers, as colleagues, as just like humans interacting with other humans, that, everyone makes mistakes,
Oh, yeah.
but those mistakes don't define us.
Hmm.
And when we can approach those situations with empathy and understanding, it can be incredibly powerful.
So we've covered these 3 core techniques, right? 1-minute goals, 1-minute praisings, 1-minute reprimands. But it feels like there's like this even bigger picture here. Like there's this underlying philosophy to all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what makes the book so much more than just like a quick fix management guide, because it
Yeah.
really is about this fundamental shift in perspective.
From what to what?
I would say it's moving away from this idea of employees as resources to be managed and moving towards like recognizing them as valuable individuals, individuals who have their own unique strengths and their own unique motivations. And the book argues that making that shift in mindset is essential for creating like a truly engaged and productive work environment.
Which, let's be honest, a lot of workplaces struggle with that, right? Like,
Oh, totally. 100%.
right, like so many companies miss the mark on that.
Yeah, they're missing out.
It's so true. Okay, so that shift in mindset, it's really at the heart of this whole 1-minute manager concept.
It really is. It's about creating a culture of, respect, transparency, where people actually feel connected to their work and to each other.
Totally. And that makes me think about that idea of psychological safety that we've talked about before. This idea that you can speak up at work, share your ideas, even make mistakes without feeling like you're going to be punished or humiliated for it.
Yes,
Oh,
100%. And there's so much research now that shows how important psychological safety is if you want a team to be innovative and creative,
right.
right? If people are afraid to take risks, they're not going to, come up with any groundbreaking ideas.
It's true. It's like that old saying, the best way to get a good idea is to get a lot of ideas.
Right.
But you can't get a lot of ideas if everyone's like walking on eggshells all the time.
Totally. And I think that's where those 1-minute techniques, even though they seem simple, they can make a huge difference in creating that kind of environment where people feel safe to,
To be themselves, to mess up.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because you're setting those clear expectations, but you're also recognizing effort and addressing those mistakes in a constructive way, right?
Right. Not just tearing people down.
Exactly. So people end up feeling supported and empowered
Yeah.
to actually do their best work.
I love it. Okay, so we've gone deep on like the techniques, the research, the philosophy, all of it. But, at the end of the day, it's really about taking this stuff and actually applying it to our own lives.
It is 100%. That's where the rubber meets the road, as they say.
Right. And I think that's what's so great about this book is that it's not just like abstract theories. It gives you really tangible tools that you can put into practice, like today.
Yes. like right now.
Right. So whether you're, a manager who's like, my team's not really performing where I want them to be, or even if you're just someone who's like, I just want to bring a little more clarity and positive reinforcement into, my relationships, my work life, there's something in here for everyone. What's something that really stood out to you from all of this?
I think for me, what I always come back to with this book is this idea that, effective management and really effective communication in any part of life boils down to treating people with respect, recognizing their humanity, and creating an environment where they feel truly valued and supported.
Oh, I love that. That's so good. And it's funny because, obviously the book really focuses on managers, right? But I feel like these principles could apply to like so many different areas of life, like our relationships with our families, our friends, even just like, strangers we interact with on a daily basis. Like imagine if we all kind of adopted this philosophy of like clear communication, genuine appreciation, giving feedback in a constructive way.
Oh, the world would be a different place.
Right. Like what kind of ripple effects could that create? It's pretty powerful stuff.
It is. It really is.
Well, there you have it. Another deep dive in the books. We explored the surprisingly effective world of 1-minute management. We talked about the techniques, the research, the philosophy, all of it. But the real journey starts now. How are you going to take these insights and actually use them to make a positive impact on your world? That's something to think about. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.